Okay, I see a thumbs.
I was segueing you into this.
Okay.
Onward, upward.
Well, because we're really excited about that. We found something that I believe is fundamental. Let me just start with: Did you know that? Did you know that there are half dozen papers that have appeared over the past 100 years that nobody knows about because it seems oddball, but all the findings are similar, and each one is done in a different experimental setup, different animal, whatever. The heart stops, and you expect the flow will stop too, but the flow doesn't stop. The flow continues, and and um, and if the heart's not pumping but the flow continues, you got to scratch your head and say, what the hell is going on here? Because something's not right, and people have not paid attention to these papers. So something's going on. There must be some other source besides the heart that drives the flow. At least, that's the logical conclusion. But it didn't start that way. It started with me with a trip to Moscow. I was visiting my friend Vladimir Vyakov, a guy who's vice chair of biochemistry at Moscow University, which is generally regarded as their #1 university. And he introduced me quickly to the guy down the hall, and Vladimir wanted me to hear what he had to say. And so the guy starts off by saying, with translations from Vladimir, saying, there's a big problem in the cardiovascular system. Big problem? I never heard of a problem. What's the problem in the cardiovascular system? In fact, I did my Ph.D. work studying the cardiovascular system, studying the pressures and flows. And I guess I thought I had it all worked out. We could understand the pressure waveform and the flow waveforms and the different regions. And, so I came in with, as the Israelis like to say, cutting the clouds with my nose, a bit arrogant, thinking, what on earth is this guy going to tell me? He says there's a big problem. Well, after 5 minutes, he had me convinced that there really was a big problem. So what's the big problem? The big problem is a plumbing problem. If you think about it, it's nothing complicated. Red blood cells are 6 or 7 micrometers in diameter. They have to pass through blood vessels, capillaries that are down as small as 3 or 4 microns in diameter. So imagine, you've got a big blob that needs to pass through a thin tube. It's like, like your toilet getting stopped up. You got to take the plunger and you plunge and plunge and plunge, and finally you get it out of the way and the toilet's working again. Well, the same principle applies. You need energy. You need energy to take those red blood cells and bend them, squeeze them so that they can work their way through. And indeed, they're squeezed. You can see it on videos as they pass through those narrow capillaries. They're squeezed through, and it's just they've got to work their way through. So these guys, Russians, are really into calculations. They like to do that. They're highly quantitative. So these guys calculated how much energy do you need, and it turned out to be nothing short of astronomical. They computed that if the heart were responsible for providing the energy to squeeze every one of those red blood cells, the amount of pressure that the heart would need to develop would be something like 1 million times the pressure that it actually develops. So you might say that's high blood pressure, but high to the extreme. So it's obviously the heart can't be responsible. There must be something else that works together with the heart. I hesitate to say instead of the heart, because heart, it develops pressure and it seems to drive the blood, despite what Rudolf Steiner was saying about the heart not being a pump. I don't know, it depends on your definition of a pump exactly, but it's got to play some role. But in addition to that, there's got to be something else. So what could that something else be? Well, hit my head over my head with a hammer. We just found in the laboratory that you take a tube made of Nafion, put it in the water, a hydrophilic tube, and the water, quote, spontaneously flows through it. We know it's not really spontaneous. It has to do with easy buildup, which is then fueled by infrared energy. But I thought, maybe the same thing applies in everybody's cardiovascular system. Maybe the vessels themselves are driving the flow. And so we went ahead and tested it with positive results. And the guy who did the hands-on test is a student of mine who now got his Ph.D. and moved on. And he told me afterward, when I first proposed the idea to him, he said he thought I must have been on some kind of drug because, I mean, preposterous. Everybody knows that the heart is driven, that the heart drives the circulation. I thought so too. Why would anybody have reason to doubt it? But as I've told you, there is reason to doubt, especially the idea that, if you stop the heart, the flow continues at a low value, but it continues. So something else must be pumping. So he did the experiment. He did it on a chick embryo. So living circulation, a 3-day-old chick embryo, the circulation is very well developed. But the regulatory systems, the hormonal and neuronal regulatory systems, are not yet well developed. So it's a pretty pure situation. And he developed a way of imaging various blood vessels so he can track the flow. First thing he did was he stopped the heart. And indeed, the flow continued. So there's got to be something else, right? Unless there's some kind of artifact, because 2 + 2 = 4. Very simple logical deduction. Something else is at play. And then he tested the signature feature of what we found in the laboratory, and that is, if you add infrared energy, the flow goes faster. And that's exactly what we found. And you take away the infrared energy, it returns back to where it was. So we got that result, and the paper has been submitted for publication. But we think that the results are sound. And the bottom line from this is we all like to think that our circulation is driven by the heart, but we found that it's driven not only by the heart, but also by the vessels themselves. For technical reasons, we can't say what percentage is driven by the heart and what percentage by the vessels, but we have reason to think that it's pretty substantial. The vessel-driven component is quite substantial, and it'll be in the future that we attempt to find out what the percentage actually is, but it's probably substantial. So it's kind of fun and neat, out of this simple incursion into studying water and energetics and whatever, we come forth with a finding that has pretty important implications. So that's one of the implications, and